Extraction was released in 2020 as a Netflix exclusive, and this stars Chris Hemsworth. It's directed by Sam Hargrave, who is a stuntman and stunt coordinator. That's how he's best known, and he's known for working with the Russo brothers. And this film was written by Joe Russo, specifically, and it's basically a high octane action military film. And I remember watching this close to when it was released on Netflix, and I remember really falling in love with this movie. I thought it was really well done. The recipe for it was perfect when it comes to action films. Very glorified B movie. I mean, it is a pretty high budget, and all the choreography and action scenes really stuck in my memory. So it was definitely a memorable action flick, and I had not seen it since until well, now obviously, but I wanted to review both films now because a sequel was just released to it on Netflix, and as soon as I heard of the sequel, I wanted to immediately rewatch the first one, and I thought of reviewing both. Now, I'm gonna be mentioning some spoilers in this one as well as when I review the second film because they're readily available on Netflix and they're Netflix exclusives. I certainly recommend just go see them and then watch the reviews. Or if you don't give a shit, just watch the reviews. But I am going to be throwing spoilers into these reviews because these films are free to watch, and if you want to, check them out first, I highly recommend doing so because I'm a hater of spoilers, and I try to avoid everything until I've seen the film myself. So, like I said, Chris Hemsworth stars in this one, and what we have going on here is he plays a mercenary essentially, and we have this kid in Mumbai, India. His name is Ori, and his father is in prison. His entire family is gang related, and a rival gang led by this guy named Asif, or last name Asif anyway. Um, Basically kidnaps the kid, or his gang kidnaps the kid at this club. I don't know how the fuck the kid got in the club because he's like 15. But regardless, he's in this club that clearly looks like an adult nightclub. And these corrupt police officers basically like give him a hard time for having drugs on them or something. They immediately just pull out a gun and shoot his friend, which is fucked. And then they kidnap him and they take him to Dhaka, Bangladesh, and essentially this is like a rescue mission where Chris Hemsworth as a mercenary, he's from Australia, and he's hired in to rescue this kid, as well as this guy named Saju, who was basically the protector of the kid in the first place. And Saju is sent by the father of the child who is in prison as kind of like you failed to protect him and you failed to keep him safe. So now, if you don't go rescue him and solve this entire problem, I'll go after your own son, and then kind of make an eye for an eye situation. So we have these two guys going after this kid, and action galore ensues, and it's basically an extraction mission or a rescue mission in Dhaka. Dhaka gets completely shut down from this gangster who runs this gang named Asif, and his boys kind of like shut down every bridge and shut down every exit from Dhaka. So it basically turns into this whole like siege mission where this kid is eventually he has a bounty put on him, and he's worth like 10 grand or something like that. I think it's 10 grand. But yeah, that's essentially what the plot revolves around, is everybody focused on this kid and trying to get at him. This film is fucking fantastic, man. I think I gave it a 4 last time, and this comes up to a 4.5. Now, this got like a 67% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's ridiculous. And something along those lines too on IMDb. I'm more of an IMDb guy, as I've mentioned in other reviews. But this film is friggin' good. I mean, I think I can see maybe a lot of people saying it's not unique. It copies other things. It's very unrealistic. You have to like suspend your disbelief with the action. It doesn't make sense that people are living and surviving the things that they do, okay, whatever. But it's a friggin' action spectacle. Like, the plot is like the last thing, and realism is the last thing I'm gonna go into a film like this expecting. I expect a really well delivered action film, and it honestly hits every button and every check mark for an action film. Like, I mean, like Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of the first ones to pop up in my mind. That is just a perfectly done recipe for an action film. It's a perfectly done action film for what it is. A cheesy, very simple plotted film where you have this action hero thrown into some kind of mission, and throughout the entire film he's just shooting people up. This one is even more enhanced. It's got modern technology to it. It's got the most amazing camera work that I've seen. Like, I mean, there's better obviously, but like if you like The Raid and Raid 2 especially, and if you like John Wick kind of stuff, this is right up that alley. Like, it's in the same category as those films in my opinion. Yeah, sure, a lot of those might be better than this one in a lot of different aspects, but this film falls in line with those films very well, especially Raid 2. And when it comes to the choreography, because we're dealing with Sam Hargrave, who is a professional stuntman and stunt choreographer, and when you figure that out, you're like, oh, well, yeah, obviously, with everything Chris Hemsworth is doing. My favorite shot in the film is when they're he's with the kid and they're in this like village kind of thing, and a lot of shots too are filmed as if they're one take. Now, if they actually are one take, that's awesome because they really look like they are. And even if they're not, it doesn't matter because they're filmed to look that way and they succeed tremendously. And eventually, him and the kid get in this car, in this vehicle, and the vehicle's driving forward while the camera's following the car. And then there's a blockade of cops, so they drive backwards, and the camera's still on the car. And somehow the camera manages to, or whoever's operating it, or however they were handling that shot, they get the camera to go from outside of the vehicle in through the window of the vehicle, and then the camera starts filming the two in the driver's seat and passenger seat as the car keeps driving around this town. And then they get out of the car and they go through buildings and they're falling off balconies, and everything is made in one take. But that shot specifically with that vehicle was just movie magic, and it really, really blew me away. So if you like the one take style of filmmaking, like Raid 2 does a lot and does really, really well, this, like I said, is along those lines and pretty much in that vein. Now, I say this about every movie that has this going on. Do like high school kids in other countries regularly have conversations in English? Because it starts that way, and I'm like, is this just going to be a people pleasing film that they have everybody speak English for the sake of not people not having to read or anything? It's not that, because this film is subtitled a lot. I'd say probably half is subtitled in Punjabi or whichever language that the characters are speaking. There's probably multiple. But a lot of the scenes, especially at the beginning of the film, where this kid is in school, he's having like conversations in English with his friends, and this always gets to me because I don't know how realistic that is. People in other countries, I mean, do they regularly speak in English amongst themselves? Like, I mean, in Canada, like I took French in school, but I've never seen two people from Canada go back and forth in French unless their primary language is French. Like, maybe it's different in Quebec. I didn't grow up in Quebec. I grew up in Ontario. I was born and raised in Ontario, and we learned French in high school, but we weren't speaking. We weren't having French conversations on a regular, everyday basis. And I don't really see, people in America who frequently learn Spanish doing that either. Like, I don't see a couple New Yorkers having a fluent Spanish conversation at a coffee shop here and there, you know what I mean? But a lot of films do that, like I said. So it can appeal to a bigger audience because a lot of people hate reading films and whatever. And they'll have the characters speak English, even though as an audience you're supposed to imagine them speaking that language, but you can understand them speaking in English. It's just very strange. I'm a subtitles guy, and this film has a lot of subtitles, but it still does that conversation between kids in Mumbai speaking in English, which I don't think they would do. But that's just a nitpick I have every time that's in a film. I'm like, those kids would be speaking the language of Mumbai, not English. It just, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe English is the second language in Mumbai, or maybe it's just as common as Punjabi or whatever else. I don't know. Just saying. I already mentioned that shooting with the corrupt cops was fucked because they just come out talking to the kids about like he dropped his joint or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, you smoking this?" And he's just like comes out of nowhere, and like they do a lot of deaths with kids in this film too. There's one scene with the gangster guy who had the gang kidnap the kid in the first place. There's a scene on a rooftop with him and his gangs, and they're interrogating a bunch of kids who all look like teens. I mean, the oldest one looks 16, for God's sakes. And they're interrogating them about some money, and if they don't give them the answers, some goon will just grab a kid and literally just throw them off the balcony. I'm like, holy shit, these guys are ruthless. And then one of the kids, I mean, says like, okay, okay, I'll tell you, and then the gangster's like, tell me then. He's like, it was the guy who you just threw off the roof who's guilty about stealing the money or something. And then the guy, Asif, is like, okay, well, since he's dead now, why don't you cut off two of your fingers to as a walking example of not to lie to me or not to play games with me or something like that. Really, really fucked up. The city of Dhaka looks great in Bangladesh. Again, going back to the way the camera work is done, everything just looks fantastic with the choreography and how they make these scenes really look one shot. And like all the action that's going on, it's just so much on screen that you would think it would be even more difficult to make one takes or seemingly one take with so much going on screen at once, that they just do such a great job with it. Chris Hemsworth plays his character very, very well. I love the bond that he starts to develop with this kid, Ori, and they really they bond together really well. Like they teach each other a lot of things. The beginning of the film, going back to unrealism again, when we're introduced to Chris Hemsworth's character, Tyler is his name. He's hanging out with his buddies on some cliff, and then he just randomly is like, hold my beer, and then he jumps off a cliff, and this cliff is high. Like, it's high as a motherfucker, and he just goes straight down into the water, and he's fine. He hits the water at such vigorous force, and then it just goes back to him, and he's sitting at the bottom of the water, like cross-legged, meditating like this while holding his breath. I'm like, really? Like, really? And maybe that's what a lot of people don't like about the suspending a disbelief, and maybe that's why that's where most of the criticisms come in this film. But that whole thing also plays into the movie again. The kid drops this quote, you don't drown by falling into the river but remaining submerged in it, which is a very like no shit kind of quote, but it does mean a lot because that quote connects to a lot of scenes in the film. The beginning of it, a mirroring shot at the end of the film where Ori is practicing swimming in a swimming pool, and then he rises up and he sees like a blurry image of Tyler, where Tyler at the climax of the film was kind of suggested that he had died. The climax is fantastic. They have this whole sniper situation where the woman who basically is, she's, I don't know what to call her. She's a very gorgeous woman, and I'm gonna try to pronounce her name, but I'm gonna butcher it entirely. She's a woman from Iran, or an actress from Iran, and her name is, I'll try here, Golshifte Farahani. That's the best I could do. Very complicated name to try and say. But this actress is gorgeous. She performs very, very well in this film. And she does have some controversy on things, unfortunately, that happened with her involving Iran, where she came from, and ideas that and morals that they have, that they don't necessarily agree on things that she's done in her professional career. Not going to get into them, but if you want to look that up, pretty ridiculous, but it boils down to she's not allowed back in Iran or some shit. Ridiculous political stuff. Anyway, she does fantastic in this film. She's badass in the climax scene on this bridge that I'm talking about, where we get everybody together, like her, Tyler, Ori, Saju, who was the second guy who's after trying to rescue the kid. Eventually, they're enemies in the first half of the film, but eventually they have to band together. And David Harbour shows up in this film, which I can't forget to mention him. Awesome guy, but he plays, well, his character turn is really, really fucked. He's friends with Tyler, and Tyler goes to basically take cover with him and stay low and out of this gang's eyes, kind of thing, and off the radar at this guy, his David Harbour's house. He plays a guy named Gasper. So they go to hide out there, but Gasper basically was told that this kid has a bounty on him now, and they can make like $10 million, and he wants to split it with Tyler and give Ori a peaceful death. And he's really about it. He's like, yeah, let's do the best thing for Ori, put a bullet in his head, he'll go out real quick, and he won't have to like suffer the torture and everything that if he is kidnapped, they will be brutal and ruthless on this kid. Like, he will suffer tremendous pain where we could just end his life real quick and then make a bunch of money. I'm like, dude, you are so fucking immoral. Like, holy shit. And I like David Harbour as an actor, but his character Gasper in this movie, Jesus Christ, man. That is like the most soulless thing that I could possibly ever imagine. And then their fight that they have because Gasper is ready to kill the kid, and Tyler intervenes. He's like, no fucking way. And then they have a really great, well choreographed scene. I really like that. There's a scene that I love where, again, it's all in seemingly one take, and Tyler, Chris Hemsworth's character, grabs a soldier, whips the soldier's leg against another soldier's head, where it breaks back and basically like bends, and then throws the soldier away. So whenever you use a live body as a weapon, I mean, you can't get any crazier than that. And that's where like the whole B movie territory. This isn't even like, I wouldn't call it a B movie because it's so high budget, and the effort and talent behind it is so huge. Like, if you took away all the money, this would be like a CGI fest, kind of like everything fake looking kind of B movie. But it has that flavor of a B movie, just with really, really massive talent behind it. And I think that's what makes it amazing for me. And I really, really, really am hoping that Extraction 2 is on par at least, because if it's a real like nosedive down and doesn't hold the merit and the epicness that this film has, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. But it's by the same production team and same director. Chris Hemsworth is back too, so I'm not too afraid of it. But yeah, it's well done. There's one scene too where Tyler, he says to the kid, "Do you trust me?" And the kid's like, "No," and he's like, "Good." And then he tosses him into the or like gives him a big shove to jump roofs. And I just love how like that line delivery was perfect. It's like, "You don't trust me? Awesome. Now fucking go," kind of thing. Fuck anxiety. Let's just go forward. But yeah, if you can get over the unrealisticness of it, I mean, in that case, you probably hate every action movie ever that came out in the late 80s, early 90s that starred Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone. But if you can enjoy that kind of action silliness, this film does it perfectly. And like I said, for an action film, the recipe is perfect. It's like you can get a bunch of chefs making pasta alla carbonara, but only one or two of them is going to make that pasta alla carbonara dynamite, you know? And all it is pasta, eggs, cured pork, and cheese. But it's that touch, it's that flavor, it's that perfection of something simple. And that's what this film does. It's the perfection of a really simple minded action movie. And yes, I did quote Italian recipes to hammer down a point on films. Sue me. I don't give a shit. Extraction is awesome, and I'm very excited to get to the second film. This was an even better watch this time, and go check it out on Netflix. I mean, if you're this far into this review, I hope you've seen the film already. But let me know what you guys think. Good stuff on this one. Highly recommended. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you'd like to listen to my voice or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.